Welcome back to the Squire's workshop. We're in the basement workshop today. Watched a video the other day by Jonathan Katz-Moses where he was making marking gauges, and from Taylor Tool Works I picked up several of these kits. It comes with everything you need to make the marking gauge. I'm going to use quarter sawn oak that I actually milled on my sawmill out back, and some African blackwood that I picked up out of a scrap bin. So that should be real nice for the face. So first step is to get things down to dimensions that we need. The recommended on the kit, or the instructions that come with the kit, is about 1.25 inches for thickness on the marking gauge, and you can make it whatever shape you want. Okay, so unmowed bandsaw here. It's an old Power King from the late 40s, and the thing cuts beautiful. So actually the first thing I'm going to do is square up one edge, just because I can, because I know this side is flat. It's just not plain pretty, so it's running pretty flat. So anyway, I'm going to square this edge and then flip it up this way, actually this way, and cut it to the width that I need. So I'm going to get noisy because I'm going to turn on the dust collector. I don't know how well you can see that. It gets me a really nice cut. So we want to put that away. So we're going to take this down to 1.25 inches. Alright, really nice cut again. My blade wandered a little bit toward the middle of that, and I think that blade is getting, actually I know that blade is getting dull, so it's time to get that off of there. But we still got enough meat that I can still level it out on the planer and be good to go. Alright, so hopefully that focused. Again, one of the curses of a small shop, there's not a lot of room to do anything. Little 4-inch planer works pretty good, and it'll certainly do what I need it to do, which is just plane this side flat. Once that's flat, then we can work on our piece of African blackwood, get that flat too. And I'm just, when I'm doing this through the planer, I use a push block, hopefully not full of sawdust again, but use the push block and just take barely taking anything on it. So let me get this fired up. Gonna get noisy. So it turned out really nice. It's a really nice surface. When I first started feeding this, the grain direction was wrong, so it's tried to eat it, and so that's why I backed off. Turn it around, there's a knot here that's causing problems, but I'm not planning on using that knot anyway. I'm going to use like this much of it, so that's fine. So now the next thing is I'll actually zip this off real quick and then figure out where I want this to be. I'm really liking the grain through the center of this, so I will get that positioned on there, clamped and glued. Okay, so looking over my oak, because this is going to be the back, the side that the operator sees. So I decided which I want to be the top, which is this side. I marked over the center of where I want the marking gauge to be centered. So, and that's actually right there. So when I glue on this, I can figure out how that goes on best, get it glued. I think it's got to go that direction. And then we'll get it clamped. Not important to get the squeeze out off of it at this point, because a lot of it's going to get cut off anyway, but I do want to do this bottom edge. Try to keep that cleanish. Now we just have to wait for the glue to dry. But take this out of the clamps, so back to the marking gauge. Let's see how things look. So looks real good. A little bit of squeeze out, that's okay, because that's all going to go away. So at this point, the next thing is I want to flatten this. It's actually pretty good right now. Actually, I might be able to get away with not having to do anything to it. Yeah, actually I'm thinking all it needs is a good sanding, and it should be good, because it's got a little bit of ripple to it, but that should come out with sanding. And holding it up against a edge I know is flat. Yeah, that's going to look real good. So don't have to worry about that. Alrighty. After planing, I don't know how well you can see that, but that cleaned up that quarter sawn figure really, really well. That's real nice and flat now. And before any sanding, we are still a shade over 1.25 inches. So that's going to turn out real nice. It gives me plenty of room to sand. If we're a little proud of an inch, sorry, come over here where you can see. So it's still 1.25 inches thick here, a little more than. If we're a little more than, that's fine. I don't want to be under that because of the thickness of the nut that goes down through. These little things, but the head of the brass nut here is 3/4 of an inch, and you want that centered on your blank. You don't want it hanging over the front edge for sure, so good to go. So this is 6 inches across, which is way too much. I'm actually going to kind of center it at 4 inches. Just want to decide how I want that grain to look. So from 3, come off both sides 2 inches. So I'm going to go to the compound miter saw and zip this off. I'll go a little wide on both sides. And then once that's done, I'm actually going to turn it over and clip off this backside and make that all square, so I'll catch some of the oak too. And then I'll have 4 inches by about 3 inches. It's a little over 3, so a 4 by 3 block, and then I can do the rest of the layout from there as far as where the holes go and stuff, and also determine how I want it to look when it's all done. Alright, there it is, all nice and pretty. Got some beautiful grain structure there too. That'll all get sanded and dealt with. That won't be the final top because it'll get arched. In the instructions, they give you several different shapes to utilize. I actually like this shape. I tend to round it off a little more than that, but it still ends up being 3.5 inches and about 2 3/4 by the time I'm done with it. So this block is still too big, but I'd rather have it too big than too small, because you can cut it smaller, you can't cut it bigger. So and then I hide tools right in front of myself. So again, so right now it's just a shade over 4. I'm going to take it down to 3.5. I want to make sure I got good cuts before I did it. And I got some really nice quarter sawn grain going on there. And then I think I'm going to do it at 2.5 at the top edge. Yeah, a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I want the marking gauge to come out, so I want the rod to come out about 1 inch above the bottom. To be its bottom point. And of course centered on the block, so it's 3.5 wide, so that's 1 3/4. So grab my square. And then the line for the center line I'm going to carry up to the top and around the top. So that I can get it lined up centered with the hole that I'm drilling down the center, and that's where the set screw will lock in. So to accommodate things, this gets drilled with an 8mm drill bit. The top piece gets drilled with a 25/64, and that goes down 1/2 inch or so, a little more than 1/2 inch. And then the rest of the way it goes through with a 1/4 inch drill bit. So the first thing to drill is the center here, and then go from the top so you can make the ends meet. So let me get set up for that. put this in there. You could use this big old brass nut to do that. I don't recommend that. We end up tearing up that knurling. That's really pretty. But I have a 1/4 bolt here. I think that's what it is. It fits on it perfect. That and look away. A crescent wrench, and a little brute force, and that gets it right down in there. Alright, so the bit was set up previously. So we're just going to round off all these edges. It's got the bearing on it, so I can't overdo it. I'm going to go around the sides, both sides, front and back, and along the top, these edges. So, yeah. Going to get noisy. Alright, so hopefully you can see that pretty good. So that's actually a 3/8 round over bit, so it just rounds it a little bit. It's going to have some contrast around where you can see the oak behind the blackwood. So I did the back side and the front side. These edges here, I'll just sand them to kind of match. So at this point, it's a whole lot of sanding. For this, I'm going to actually start with 150, and then I got 220 and 320. I won't go past 320 because I don't think I need to. And then, like I say, the Danish oil, which I'll let sit and soak in overnight. And then I will put water-based poly on it. I'll put semi-gloss on it because I like the semi-gloss. And she's done. Just a matter of putting the pieces back in it. So. Alright, sanding. Yay, fun. Okay, lost the footage of actually doing the finish. Don't know what happened to it, so not a big deal. But here's the finished marking gauge. So again, 1/4 sawn oak on the back, African blackwood on the front. The kit comes from Taylor Tool Works. They're $11. If you get the kit, by the way, make sure you have an 8mm bit because you absolutely need one to do this. 5/16 will not do it. This shaft is too tight for that. And then a big shout out to Jonathan Katz-Moses because he's the one that inspired me to do this. Saw him do one and he actually used the same kit. And then he showed several that he's already done also that are really, really neat and gorgeous, and I thought that was a good idea. So this is actually my second one. The first one was ash and rosewood, and just kind of a prototype thing that's mine. But anyway, there you go. Thanks a lot.